Rebecca Asher is the director of all 6 episodes of the first season of Big Mood. I'm at Noble Gold Derby, and I wanted to start, Rebecca, by asking you, um, you've done a lot of TV work, a lot of work in TV comedy, stuff ranging from Dead to Me to Brooklyn Nine-Nine. What is different about Big Mood than anything you've ever done before?
Oh my gosh. I think it goes to some places that some of the stuff I've worked on haven't gone to before. It's a little darker than some of the things that or it goes to darker places than some of the things I've worked on before. And I got to do the whole thing, which is different for me. I mean, I'm usually sort of visiting a show and doing a few episodes, and then, someone else comes in and does some more episodes. So I really got to come in the beginning and set the visual tone and style of the show, and that was extremely satisfying. I wasn't trying to sort of replicate something, but I was sort of doing what I felt was best for the story.
That's good. And what was that like, getting to sort of establish the visual style of the show, but then also get to oversee it for the full 6 episodes and have that sort of like follow through on a vision you're able to set up? And yeah, not just what was it like, but also what was your priority in establishing that look and overseeing it?
Yeah, first of all, it's so satisfying to be able to do that because you are able to create intention with your shots the whole way through. For the whole story, you can set up how this story is going to be told. Which is very satisfying. And so I worked with Dan, our DP, this lovely Dan Stafford Clark, who's incredibly talented, to set up this sort of visual style where it became important to me when Maggie and Eddie were together, to shoot it as sort of grounded and organic and have them as close together as possible at all times and have them in the same frame all the time and create like an intimacy with the shots with them. So when they're alone, when in like episodes 5 and 6, they've sort of gone their separate ways a little bit, or they separate for a little bit, you are hopefully made a little uncomfortable by their absence of one another. So I decided to sort of split the camera styles up a little bit. So we're handheld with them most of the time. And then most of the time when they're alone, we're sort of more still and sometimes even a little more, a tiny bit, not, but a tiny bit more stylized. So there's a tiny bit of a disease sometimes when they're apart, trying to sort of manage their lives sort of apart from each other. So that's one thing I wanted to establish. We also, from the very beginning, in the very first script, the color drain in the end of the first episode was written into the scripts. And I thought this would be a great thing to draw through the whole series. So Dan and I, and in a subtle sort of way, but Dan and I went to our colorist and created two extreme LUTs, one for mania and one for depression. And then I made the nerdiest of spreadsheets that broke down every scene and talked about where on this spectrum our LUT should be, depending on where Maggie was in her bipolar spectrum, basically. Because it felt like her environment, I mean, like all of us, our environment is sort of goes through our filter first, right? So everything sort of feels a certain way because we are, happy or we are anxious or, so that ran through. And then on that spreadsheet too was any music Camilla had put in the scripts, because the music is baked in those scripts too. She's very specific about the music she wants to use, whether it's handheld or not, and whether for the stuff in Maggie's head, we used an anamorphic lens to just take advantage of that slightly blurred reality, like a slightly off reality of what's going on. I mean, sometimes not so slightly off with Maggie, but So we used that to do that. It was just about the whole kind of intention was just about immersing the audience, hopefully, in their lives, and hopefully you get a real sense of what Maggie's going through and what Eddie's going through. I mean, you hope that for anything that you make, of course, but I was trying to be very conscientious of that, to try to not make it feel, just to draw the audience in as much as possible. So hopefully by the end of this, you have like a deep understanding of that friendship, of how much they love each other, of what Maggie's going through, and of the sort of loneliness that Eddie's feeling by not being supported when basically the first time she has asked for help for the first time.
Yeah, and you talked about like there how the show like deals with Maggie's mental health and bipolar. Like how did you decide to approach sort of handling the depiction of mental health in how you shot it and told the story?
It could what I felt like was really important. I mean, firstly, you have these incredible scripts. So they are, again, I'm just but yeah, again, they're very specific. Camilla's writing is very, very specific. So what became important was making sure you're telling that story. And then around that, I have friends who are bipolar. I have I talked in therapy a lot about, I grilled my therapist about bipolar disorder. And then I have my own experience. I'm not bipolar myself, but I have my own experiences that in some ways are similar to Maggie, some self-harm stuff when I was younger, and anxiety and stuff like that. So I felt like if I'm true to the scripts, and I can just sort of cull some knowledge from my friends who have bipolar, and from my therapist, like some real, like sort of like the actual scholarly knowledge about bipolar disorder. um I will be I'll be sensitive to it, and I'll be able to effectively tell the story I think that Camilla is trying to tell, and to be true to Maggie's experience, um, which was important to me.
Yeah.
So
For parts of her character that hit close to the bone for you, is that like confronting to have to approach as a director, or is it freeing to get to tap into your own experience and
yeah,
relationship?
I think honestly, I sort of wished, not even sort of, I absolutely had this thought many times. I thought, like, I wish this show existed when I was a kid. Because as it was, I mean, I remember having a particular, is this too personal? I don't know. I'm going to say it, see what
Yeah.
happens. Um, but I was with a friend of mine who I'd known since kindergarten. And I think we were like in high school, and we were at some bar or something. And she saw a cigarette burn on my arm that I had done. And I remember her face was, and I love her, and I love her and she loves me um completely. But her face was so, not mortified, but she was like, it had a little bit of a subtext of like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I mean, I remember it so clearly to this day. And I think like it's it's liberating to portray something like that, because especially in this kind of thing that doesn't treat that subject matter with kid gloves, which can actually have the effect of making something not seem normal. I think
Mm.
if you play it for real, like it's played in this show, it normalizes it. So to know that potentially I'm a part of something where somebody will feel seen, and there's no shame behind it. I mean, of course, in the scene, there's like, she reveals she takes her octopus arms off, and
Yeah.
people are a little horrified, but that story can be told is normalizing.
Mm.
So it wasn't at all. I was just grateful to be a part of telling that story and that part of it too, because I know what it feels like to be looked at funny in that instance.
Yeah.
But it's happened. There are a lot of people who do it, and it's a strange. I mean, like I still to this day sort of can't explain it, but I
Yeah.
sort of know why I was doing it. I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah. And that's actually like a great scene to like reflect on a little bit, because you've got that moment of real like sort of vulnerability of Maggie's character when she removes the octopus arms,
Yeah.
but it's also part of this great comedic
Yeah.
build of the episode where just everything's going wrong at the same time, and you've got
Yeah.
like some of the great ridiculous absurdity of the show happening with rats on the loose
Yes.
and every like
Yes.
so like how do you sort of balance those sorts of very real sort of dramatic raw vulnerable moments while you've got absurd comedy happening at the same time in the show?
Yeah. I think so much of it is actually, I feel like I've said this phrase a lot today, but it's so baked into the script. I mean, you do have a woman on mushroom oil giving a speech, a ridiculous speech at the front of a room in an octopus costume. Like it is bonkers. And on its just in its existence, it's funny already. And and to be able to punctuate it with the pulling off of her octopus arms and bring everybody in the room down a little bit is so satisfying. And I don't think there's much. I mean, there was Camilla just said in another interview, she was like, we did have to remind people every once in a while, like this is a comedy, you're allowed to be silly. So there was a little bit of that, but I think everybody really understood what the tone was. And again, it was also well written and the jokes were so well baked in that you didn't have to separate yourself from something um that was funny to then like shift into something that was serious, because it organically really sort of followed like this beautiful path all through those things, kind of really, really incredibly.
Yeah,
Those
it's a bonkers scene, yet it's also the one that when I asked you about what was sort of you were able to relate to and connect to the most, or like,
yeah,
was profound. It was also
yeah,
that scene, which I thought was a lovely sort of, um, summary of the series, maybe those
yeah,
bringing together of different tones and, balance the silliness against the real sincerity.
yeah.
Um, was there a scene that was the most challenging for you to direct?
Oh my gosh. I mean, the pagan festival was we had like 2 days to shoot all that stuff in the woods, and it was a tight schedule.
Mm.
And then we had a at the very wrong time a COVID case that came that made us have to recast somebody. And so it was difficult because we had so little time, which is not it's not the sexy answer to that question. Um,
Yeah.
but that is whenever somebody asks like a difficult part to shoot, I do think about that festival. I think like, whoo,
Yeah.
I did not think we were going to make that.
Mm.
Um, but we did. Look at us. And then the Rat Hotel, which I was obsessed with from the minute I read those scripts. I was obsessed with it. And because to me too, I think the Rat Hotel to me felt like a little bit representative of what everyone was in denial about. Um, Maggie knows that she's not taking her medication and she's like trying to believe that she can do this without it. Her friends who really, really love her are maybe no, but or maybe not don't want to quite look at it. And I thought like those rats, man, those are her bipolar disorder, just like knocking at the door, you know.
Mm.
And sometimes if you're in denial long enough, just rats everywhere.
Yeah,
That's what
I
happens.
love it. Yeah.
Um, but shooting the rats got particularly lazy, and that was hard to shoot because there were sort of there were some of them when they needed to run really didn't want to.
Yeah.
That was problematic.
Yeah. like
Oh,
you've done like so much TV from like, an episode of Arrested Development, like early in your career to now, Big Mood. Like, I'm just wondering, like, what do you love about TV and how does Big Mood feed into that or serve that love?
um, I I love the immediacy of TV, which I think maybe is selfish, but I love that you can shoot something. I mean, Big Moods took 7 weeks. It took quite a long time because I did all of them, but you can shoot something and then it can be on the air within, the year. That's
Yeah.
very satisfying.
Mm.
I think it's a very accessible medium. And I enjoy that about it. And I think the accessibility of it is important for stories like this, which makes me very much appreciate Big Mood to be able to portray a female friendship like this and have a character who is bipolar but not solely defined by it, and yet you hopefully understand what that struggle is, um, and allowing people to when you can create in subject matters like this, allowing people to feel seen, and whether in terms of Big Mood, whether it's just like knowing how intense female friendships can be, knowing how hard it is to just be 30. I mean, really, to just be alive. But honestly, when you turn 30 and you're like, oh, this shit's real. Um, and when dealing with some, mental illness or someone with bipolar disorder, it's like just allowing people to be seen is the is it's very satisfying to be a part of.
Yeah. And as director, getting to help us see that, like to see people be seen. So um, I think it's a great spot to end on, Rebecca. Thank you so much for talking to us about Big Mood and television today. All the best of luck with the upcoming Emmy Awards. People
We'll
watching this
see.
interview can go to goldderby.com to make your predictions. And yeah, thanks so much for chatting with us, Rebecca. I
Thank
really
you. It's
appreciate
nice to
it.
meet you, Matt. Yeah, thank you very
Lovely
much.
to meet you.